we would like to introduce a third pioneer. And with that, I'd like to welcome not doctor, but Executive Director of Laktika Roy Foundation, Joe Chopra. I take it back, Joe. I wouldn't want to call you, of all people, a doctor. It's not a good thing to be called.
Oh, no. They're good doctors. So I'm just going to say what everybody wants to say. I love Umeed. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, all of you. I want to talk to you about what it's like to work with the government. I wasn't born when India achieved its independence, but I've lived here now for 36 years, and I've learned so much from reading about the freedom struggle and from listening to people who lived through it, people like my own mother-in-law, who was a freedom fighter. And what I've understood is it's no small thing to build a country. Patriotism is alive here in a way that I haven't seen in my own country, the United States, and I think it's true for a lot of the countries represented here today, where you're building the things that a country needs to survive, and you're working with the government to do it. So it's unbelievably exciting to be creating health systems and education systems, except when it isn't. Our bureaucracy is as mind-numbing in India as anywhere else. It's designed to suck the life out of you and to take all the spirit and the passion that you bring to your work and throw it somewhere. So I thought of calling this presentation this instead, but Umeed convinced me not to, but I stuck it in anyway. But I decided actually it made more sense to go with this one because this is what I really believe, that our job is the innovation, their job is making it into an institution. So I want to tell you about, why can't I get this to work? Gabara. Gabara is a program, Gabara means balloon, and it's our diagnostics and assessment center in Dehradun, in the state of Uttarakhand, and it's located in a busy government hospital. And when we started it, it was like a dream come true. We simply could not believe that the government, for whom children with disabilities were not on their agenda, not even on their radar, were willing to fund this and give us an amazing place in the heart of a government hospital. It was free, and it was designed for those children who needed it the most. It was gorgeous. It was colorful. It was attractive. It was welcoming to children and their families. And the way that we worked with those kids was the same. We welcomed each child in as somebody important, somebody special, somebody with potential. Meanwhile, over at the government, they were trying to run a similar system. They were in the process of building a very ambitious program to screen every single child in the country and to find those children who had difficulties and begin work with them immediately. But this is the way that they set it up. And you can see the way that a parent would feel when they walk into a center where that's what they're greeted with. Children whose disability is the main thing that's being shown. And so they recognized themselves that they needed to do something a little bit different, but they weren't quite sure how to. So they recognized Gabara as a model center for the country, and they approached us to train every single staff member in the DEICs, those are what they're called, District Early Intervention Centers, that were currently set up in our state. So we were really thrilled about this, and it sounds like a fairy tale, doesn't it? What could go wrong? But unfortunately, we failed. And as Scott Wright talked about in his presentation, I think we learn more from our failures than from our successes. Even though we like to hide those, we don't want to share too many of them. But in fact, we have learned an enormous amount from our experience with the government. And I thought I would share it with you so that you don't make the same mistakes. First is the size of the problem. Now, it is an enormous country, And the government isn't just thinking about disability, they're thinking about the price of grain, they're thinking about water and sanitation and everything that a country requires to run. And we're thinking about children with disability, and we're thinking about them like this. I know those kids' names, I know their mother's name, I know their grandparents, I know their story, and I kept trying to come and convince the government that this was really important for them to know too, but the government was thinking about grain and the price of it. So we had to move away from emotion and look at what everybody has been talking about, the data. How do we convince a government official that this is really a problem worth looking at? So if we can use stuff like this, and the way that I did convince the health secretary, sometimes I remember data, that there were many, many more children with disability than he was aware of, and the cost of not intervening early was going to be astronomical later on when those children grew up. When I convinced him of those two facts, he funded Gabara. Innovation is very appealing. We all like to be the person who is the different one, the one who's come up with a brilliant new approach. But believe me, it's the standard schemes that endure. We didn't want to do the standard government schemes, and we convinced a government official to give us money for the innovative program, which we called Gabara. But nobody ever understood what Gabara was about. They were constantly making jokes about our balloons floating away and our balloons popping and various things like that. What they understood was the DEIC. Even if they didn't know what that acronym stood for, they knew that District Early Intervention Centers were a government program, a recognized program, and if we had decided to do that instead of Gabara, we'd still be there in that government hospital today. So don't be attached to your own way of doing things. Don't be a purist. Don't think that because the government's model is a medical model and yours is a social model, because you're all about the kids and they're all about the numbers, you can't fit into their schemes. Actually, you can, because nobody ever reads the reports. Nobody ever comes and looks at what you're doing. Just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. We filed report after report after report. Nobody ever read them. Don't take things personally. I can't tell you the number of meetings I came out of feeling personally bruised and battered by a government official who trashed our work or complained about my staff or said nasty things about our kids. It was never about us. It was always about some bigger agenda that was on his or her mind. And really, if I could have just developed a thicker skin, again, I think we might still be there. Expect that there are as wonderful people in the government as in your organizations. There are visionaries, there are people who are committed to the progress of their countries everywhere, and many of them work in the government. If we believe in that, we expect that, that's what we get. This guy was a district magistrate when I met him, and that's my other point. Don't only go for the senior ones, go for the young ones, because if you are going to be here for the long haul, you need people who are going to be with you right through. I met him when he was 30 years old. He was smart, he was visionary, and I made a relationship with him. He retired as the health secretary for the government of India, the entire country, and it was because of him that Gabara was funded. So don't ever underestimate those young officials that you meet. Be strong. This is a long haul. India did not win its independence overnight. It took 200 years. We didn't get rid of, we're still working on racism in America 150 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. And children with disability are not going to be included the day after tomorrow. It's going to take a long time. But it's not good enough for it to happen only in one small town or with one small program. It has to be across the country. And that only happens if we work with the government. I met this guy. He was here in India last week, and I was privileged to be part of the town hall. And he reminded me of that old Negro spiritual, eyes on the prize. When the slaves were escaping slavery and going through the Underground Railroad up to the north to freedom, they sang that song, Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. And our eyes have to be on our prizes. Our kids are why we're here. They are what we're doing this work for. If we remember that in every decision that we make, we'll make the right decision. It is a privilege and an honor to work for the children of India, and I wish you all the best when you go back to your own countries and do the same. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the excellent three speakers that we've had and the inspirational work that they've done, the international network, the amazing resource framework, and the wonderful work that the Latika Roy Foundation has been doing. We do have 5 more minutes, so if there are any sort of comments or questions, I know that our speakers are there, but perhaps if anybody would like to share something, it'd be appreciated.